Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. And we're back. I may have slightly stretched the definition of the word couple, but close enough, right? Anyway, we've got a lot to catch up on, no time to waste. Shout out to our Tier 3 patrons, Peter Park and Shay Meehan, as well as all our other patrons. You keep me going. I think it's about time to talk podcast reform since the episodes have been getting longer, delayed, and overloaded with Trump news. I'll probably do a poll on that soon, but for now, we have a ton of Humanity Forward endorsements to catch up on. Here goes. Alex Lee is running for California State Assembly in District 25. He supports universal health care, public campaign finance, free college, and more. Jacqueline McMiller is running for mayor of Fort Myers. She supports recidivism reduction programs, a guaranteed income, and more. Tom Palzowicz is running for U.S. Congress from Wisconsin's 5th District. He supports green energy, a list of transparency and integrity commitments, and more. Candace Valenzuela is running from the U.S. House from Texas's 24th District. Candace supports extensive police reform, expanding access to vocational training, extensive democracy reform, including public campaign finance and restoring the Voting Rights Act, and more. Mike Siegel is running for the U.S. House from Texas' 10th District. A civil rights lawyer and former public school teacher, Mike supports universal health care, the Green New Deal, universal broadband, ending cash bail and private prisons, monthly stimulus checks, and much more. Mike Espy is running for U.S. Senate from Mississippi. He supports nuanced changes to education, healthcare, agriculture, expanding voter access through no-excuse absentee ballot, monthly stimulus checks, and more. Colonel Mo Davis is running for U.S. House from North Carolina's 11th District. A retired Air Force colonel from former director of the Air Force Judiciary, Mo supports decriminalizing weed, green energy, universal broadband, a public health care option, monthly stimulus checks, and more. Bet you thought that was the end. It wasn't. Haley Stevens is running for the U.S. House from Michigan's 10th District. She supports a $15 minimum wage, green energy and environmental protections, more accessible immigration, monthly stimulus checks, and more. And next we have... No, I'm just kidding. That's the end. That seems like enough. Check the links to explore these candidates further. All right, on to the bigwigs. Instead of a debate, Biden held a town hall. Trump quickly moved to a competing town hall of his own at the same time so that his supporters would not watch and potentially be swayed by Biden. At his town hall, Biden again apologized for supporting the crime bill, a punitive set of legislation that applied harsh penalties for drug use and impacted the black community particularly. He admitted it was a mistake in hindsight and stressed that drug users should be rehabilitated, not imprisoned. Along with other police reforms in his robustly progressive policy platform, say that 3 times fast. One important thing to remember about this bill, it was not just Biden supporting it. It was passed during a time of a massive swell in violent crime, and it was supported by 95% of the Senate and the majority of the country, with the largest support among the black community. Like it or not, America supported the crime bill, and Biden, as was his job, represented them. Sometimes it seems that people forget that that's what representatives are supposed to do. Moving on, the Supreme Court hearings continued, and Barrett would not comment on whether she thinks systemic racism exists in the U.S., whether she agreed with rulings on contraceptive rights or same-sex marriage, and when asked about the cause of and danger of climate change, called it a very contentious issue. She also, despite saying she doesn't discriminate, served on the board of Trinity Schools, Inc., a group of Indiana private schools that in 2014 adopted a policy of barring children with unmarried parents from attending the school. Former staffers of the board told The Times that it was designed to exclude same-sex couples as they were not legally allowed to marry at the time. When Barrett was asked to name the 5 protections of the First Amendment, she listed 4, but notably forgot the right to protest. More alarming, she refused to comment on whether Trump could legally delay the November 3rd election, whether it is illegal to intimidate voters at the polls, it is, whether Trump could pardon himself, and on whether presidents should commit to a peaceful transfer of power. At this point, we know that she's anti-ACA, abortion, fair market capitalism, gay rights, and climate change mitigation, almost certainly anti-democracy, and likely anti-contraceptive. Of course, one could pretend that she is going to be unbiased on all these issues, but then one would have to be daft. We all know humans are incapable of perfect impartiality, which is why we should strive to maintain an ideological balance on the courts. The most damning evidence, of course, of how Barrett will rule on these items, apart from her own history, is how hard the, at this point, blatantly partisan GOP is pushing for her. Her advocates will openly tell you how she will rule on abortion and much else. That is why they chose her. Overwhelmingly partisan courts is exactly how you get one-party rule. It is how democracy dies, because there is no one left to defend it. It is no coincidence that Trump, who is openly calling for bypassing the people's vote, is pushing for this judge, who refuses to say how she will rule on upholding the core values of democracy. In Trump news, which we'll try to keep short, he made a comment while I was gone saying, quote, "I'm about the best thing that ever happened to Puerto Rico. You better vote for me, Puerto Rico." End quote. What has he done for Puerto Rico? To my knowledge, nothing but throw paper towels at them in lieu of hurricane relief, which he only just now said he will send weeks before the election. Oh, and call them dirty and poor when he was comparing them to Greenland. The better question is, has there been a worse president for Puerto Rico? Moreover, as a territory, not a state, Puerto Rico cannot vote for president. Maybe Trump misspoke on that, or maybe he doesn't know. The fact that we can't be sure either way really says a lot. Further, after multiple statements on how he wants to release his taxes, Trump is still fighting court battles to keep them sealed. A federal appeals court ruled Manhattan DA Vance can enforce a subpoena for Trump's business records and tax returns. Trump has now filed an emergency request with the Supreme Court to block the release of his tax returns. Just one more thing that he will be counting on Barrett to help push through. I'm just relaying the cliff notes on this next one, but the GOP in California has been distributing ballot drop boxes in Los Angeles, Fresno, and Orange counties under the ballot harvesting law that appear to be official state property but are not. The Attorney General ordered they be removed, as voters will mistakenly believe they are handing their votes over to trusted authorities when they are not. The GOP refused and instead removed the official tag from the boxes. Ultimately, it appears that the GOP is abiding by the letter of the law, which allows for the collection of ballots from those who cannot deliver them through normal means, though it's rather murky. In smaller news, Paget and Matt's new show has its own YouTube channel now, which you can find below. Back to big news, a new article from the New Republic provides the most comprehensive account I've seen of how the GOP subverted democracy through voter suppression to the point that it may be irreversible in just the span of a decade. It may well become an excellent chronicle on how the great American experiment, the oldest surviving democratic republic, fell to autocracy. Definitely worth a read. Know your enemy. On that note, Scott wrote an article on why he is voting for Biden, despite voting Green in the past. In short, it's for the same reasons we've discussed here. Trump and the Republican Party have embraced autocracy and are waging a war on democracy and science. They must be put down as hard as possible in the popular vote to send a message that they need to reform and to try to prevent any ambiguity that Trump can use for a technical victory. And of course, he wants Biden to win to pass H.R. 1 and a host of other progressive reforms that we desperately need. Happy to see this from Scott. Been hoping that he would join us on pointing out both the opportunity and the threat of this election. In a throwback to the past, Yang says he will be back on the trail for Biden starting Sunday, so you might get your chance at a taste of the old Yang Gang rallies. We have a new UBI petition straight to the White House calling for $2,000 a month. Link below. Jaime Harrison put out a fun clip of Lindsey Graham committing a federal crime and ethics violation in asking for donations for his campaign during the Senate Judiciary Committee. Jaime made it into an ad themed to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Since Republicans in government are rarely held to the law anymore, I guess we'll have to find our satisfaction in that. And finally, in a bit of good news, it appears that the momentum continues to push in Jaime's favor and against his incumbent rival and invertebrate liar, Lindsey Graham. The newest poll out shows Jaime leading Graham by 2%. The race is winnable and vital to flipping the Senate, which is vital to making any progress and saving democracy. If the Senate stays Republican, then even if Biden wins, nothing will get done, and we will end up with another Trump attempting a coup 4 to 8 years from now. If Dems flip the Senate, they will immediately pass H.R. 1, establishing public campaign finance, eliminating the root cause of most corruption in government, as the people's money will suddenly become more powerful than lobbyist money, making our politicians loyal to us. It would also ban gerrymandering, the importance of which cannot be overstated. All those policies that have majority approval among the public will likely start passing, as our opinion becomes the deciding factor to their re-election. This is the key to the reform America desperately needs to survive and thrive. Do whatever you can to help Jaime establish a lead that is immune to voter suppression, gang. We can do this. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Check out our new candidates, bookmark and share the Barrett thread, Scott's Biden essay, Jaime's poll, and the UBI petition. Help recruit other organizations to the cause and get everyone to sign the UBI petition. Flood Congress and Trump with calls, tweets, and letters using the Resist Bot or Income Movement easy contacts below. If you need help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, the Mission Asset Fund, United Way, or the H3 podcast thread. And don't forget to Yang Daily.